Boink. How's it going?
Welcome to the Accelerativ Thrust podcast.
Whoa, right into it.
Right into it. I'm Dan.
Damn. I'm Eric.
Oh, and Erik.
Yes.
I'm doing fine.
Oh, good. Good.
Sorry.
Oh.
I purposely did that to catch you off guard and everyone else who listens.
It worked.
Yeah.
I'm kind of freaked. This is going to be a really freaky podcast. Freaky good. Oh, snap.
We're going to be interviewing someone who's freaky good.
That's true. Freaky good.
Sound Science, aka Garrett Rieks, is freaky good.
That's true.
At what he does, and we are going to be talking about him. Well, actually, with him. Yes. Yeah. Well, talking about him too, with him.
Right.
We'll be talking about him with him.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, exactly. We'll also talk about him a little bit between just you and me, I bet.
Yeah, probably.
Well, so now that we got the introduction out of the way.
Yeah, well, I guess we're in it. We're happening.
In it. It's there. Did you hear about the slap heard around the world?
I did. I wanted to see if you wanted to talk about the slap. And
sure.
It sounds like you do.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, normally I try to avoid anything that has to do with like celebrities and Oscars, except Kanye West.
Right. Of course.
Which Kanye West, this is what happens when you ban Kanye West from any sort of award show.
Someone fills the slot.
Somebody assaults somebody. And in this case, it had to be Will Smith.
I guess.
It had to be.
My first choice.
Yeah, number one.
I thought was going to smack someone, but
exactly, smackdown. Very interesting. Do you have any sort of take on it?
Well, yeah, I do. It's tough because I know there's all sorts of things involved that I don't understand and can't truly understand,
Right.
Because they could be cultural and they could be other things like that. But I'm a very devout pacifist.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't obviously think that was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that someone who can't control their actions in that way seems a bit like a loose cannon to me. Mm-hmm. I worry about the fact that he feels that he can just do that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was proven right. Mm-hmm. I think that's weird. But also, and I don't talk about my work with kids very often on the show because I think it sort of breaks the fourth wall when I'm talking about loving Satan and shooting heroin and stuff. It's like all that stuff is actually made up. And in real life, I'm a sweet guy that helps special needs kids. So I know. But here's the thing is a lot of the kids I work with have violent tendencies, and I work really, really hard to try to convince them that there are lots of different ways to get through conflict. And this just kind of makes me mad because then they see someone, and I know that kids don't give a shit about Will Smith. I mean, adults barely give a shit about Will Smith. But at the same time, if they see that this is the way to take care of someone just insulting you or someone you love, it adds this vigilante justice protector, like I have to protect the weak people who are women and children and my family. And it's like, that's not a great message. People can stand up for themselves and they can protect themselves if they deem it necessary. Most people wouldn't think that someone needs to get smacked for making a joke. Personally, I would hope.
I 100% agree with that.
So when I have to talk to kids about it, I'm always like, because they'll say, hey, I just saw so-and-so smack so-and-so or whatever. And I'll say, yeah, they must be going through something. It's too bad they don't really seem to have the tools or the resources to deal with that in a different way. I hope that, they'll be able to figure out a way to deal with that in a positive way at some point in their lives,
Sure.
And I'm talking to 8-year-olds. So it's like,
sure.
I just think it's I don't know. I just think it's kind of macho bullshit at the end of the day.
Yeah. So. And okay, so I agree with everything you just said. That's a horrible example. And I think if Will Smith really felt that way, first of all, he wouldn't have laughed at the joke at first.
Right.
Because you know that happened.
I saw that. Yeah.
He laughed. And then when he saw that Jada was probably not too satisfied with the joke that Chris Rock made, all of a sudden he thought, oh, I'm going to walk up on stage and I'm just going to sucker punch Chris Rock. Now, some people think that it was a staged situation. Yeah. I don't think so, because Chris Rock is a damn good actor. Both of them are great actors. And they could pull off staging something like that if they really wanted to.
Sure.
I do think that, I don't know. To me, it doesn't look like it's staged. It looks like Chris was genuinely caught off guard. And also, I got to say, if it wasn't staged, which again, I don't think it was, I got to give my utmost respect to Chris Rock for handling it like he did. Because could you imagine how hard that would be to have to like follow up that with presenting an award and still staying on track? I mean, Chris Rock took it like a champ.
Well, and that's the thing. If Chris Rock didn't have the resources to react in a proper way, it would have been a fist fight.
Exactly. And exactly. My concern is that this kind of plays into what you were saying, is that I'm afraid, and this is kind of why I think the idea of just randomly assaulting people because of beliefs that you don't agree with is a very slippery slope. Because now what you have, I believe that, now I'm not for censorship. I'm against censorship. However, I'm also not going to deny that I do believe that the copycat effect is very real. And I do believe that there are going to be people that saw what Will Smith did and say, okay, now everybody who says something that is offensive to me can get slapped with no consequences, because there were no consequences for Will Smith. Right. He ended up actually winning an award.
Right.
Like Kanye West is who you were scared of. Like, I mean, let's be honest here. Yeah, Kanye's unhinged, but clearly so is Will Smith.
Right.
And I mean, but for some reason, I feel like that is going to open up the door for this being normalized, this idea of just assaulting people with no consequences because of the fact that you were offended by something that they said. Right. It's going to open up the door for assault without consequences, which is opening up a whole other can of worms that I just don't feel we need in society. It's already pretty much been opened anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if the other part of that too is like, and this isn't just a straight cultural thing, but the idea of snitches get stitches. Like if someone smacks you, and because in the real world, not in the Oscars, but in the real world, this is assault and battery, and you could have charges. And
exactly.
But I think that then it would fall on the person who got smacked. Like, are you going to be a snitch? And it's like, maybe. I mean, I just got smacked for no reason, or beat up, or whatever.
Absolutely.
It kind of puts the pressure on the person that actually was assaulted. And I think that's kind of a weird aspect too.
Yeah, I really don't I think Will Smith could have handled it in a much more adult manner.
Yeah, a way more adult manner.
Way more.
He handled it like a third grader.
He really did. If he could have, and the thing that really disturbs me is how many people are cheering it on, using it as memes, and really looking at it from the perspective of like, it was just a funny thing that happened. But the reality is somebody did get assaulted. Now it was just a smack, and Chris Rock took it like a champ. But like,
it almost looks like a fake slap because he barely moved when he got it.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm like, okay, it could have been staged.
It looks a little fakey to me. It looks like a stage slap to me, but
it kind of does.
I don't think they would let it play out the way that they have if it were fake. I think they would have come out by now and say, we set this up.
Well,
At
okay,
this
now
point, like stuff is actually happening. Like I think that Will Smith will have some repercussions from this.
but okay, like here's one reason why I think there could be a possibility that it was staged. I mean, think about how interest has been lost in the award shows over the past few years.
Right.
This could have been something like, hey, you know what? This could actually bring some viewership, even if it's just like 5 minutes of this award show.
Sure.
People will actually be talking about it.
And they may watch next year.
And they may watch next year because, okay, next year, we're going to invite Kanye West back.
Yeah. Next year, someone's going to fucking die. It's like Thunderdome.
They do like a fake death, like a fake shooting. Oh my God. That would be terrible.
It'd be like the Source Awards or something, right?
Yeah. Like the Source. Dude, did you see the Source Awards 94 or 95? I think it was. That's the one where like Death Row showed up.
Right. Yeah. I've always wanted to make a documentary about the 95 Source Awards.
Was it 95?
Yeah. It's a pet project of mine.
It's so weird to think that the winners of the best new artist that year were Outkast.
Yeah.
Could you imagine being from the South and you only have like 3? It was just like Andre, Big Boy, and like their manager. And could you imagine them just like having to sit and like, could you imagine how scary that would be? Like, oh my God, we're going to get shot because the coasts hate each other. What are they going to think of the South?
Well, being in the middle of the country was probably a good thing at that point, you know?
Sure.
Not being on one of the coasts. That's probably why they won it. No, I'm just kidding. They are very talented.
Well, no, they were fantastic. I'm just saying that. Could you just imagine how nerve-wracking that would have been just to be there? And I think that was also the same year that Onyx played. And Fredro Starr from Onyx actually pulled out a real gun and shot out one of the lights during their performance.
Wow.
I remember Bill Bellamy. There's an interview where Bill Bellamy was talking about that. He's like, okay, now I'm all for real hip hop. That's a little too real for me.
Yeah.
So Onyx, man. Slam.
Yeah.
Da, da, da.
You know who didn't win an award?
Who?
Fresh Prince.
Dude, the Fresh Prince was, I mean, that was Will Smith was entering his he would have been like already past his like summertime phase.
Oh, so he was the Fresh Smith at that point.
The Fresh
I'm
Smith.
making all this up.
I know that.
I'm just goofing.
What I'm saying is, do you remember that album they made, Summertime?
I remember that song. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a whole album, man.
Oh.
Summertime tunes.
Wow. No, I never really got into the Fresh Smith. I liked
Fresh Smith. I love that.
I liked Nightmare on My Street, of course.
Oh yeah, first horrorcore rap song.
It's got to be up there. Although I don't know, Somebody's Watching Me feels pretty scary, but I don't know.
Rockwell, yeah, which has Michael Jackson on vocals.
Oh snap! Yeah. There's a rap in Thriller.
Yeah,
actually, that reminds me of something. Okay, the rap, I guess you would call it, that Vincent Price does.
Oh yeah, okay, all right. I get what you're saying.
He says the funk of 40,000 years.
Yep.
What the fuck does that mean?
Gosh.
But this funk of 40,000 years thing has bothered me for about 40 years. It's I need to know what they're referring to. So listeners, if you know what the funk of 40,000 years is, let me know. Because
is Vincent Price, is he still alive?
No. I think he's like super dead.
But I think that Nightmare on My Street is probably the first actual full horrorcore rap beat.
Yeah,
I would say.
I can see that.
I mean, in a fun way.
It's funny we're spending so much time talking about hip hop when we're going to be interviewing Sound Science, who absolutely is not hip hop.
It absolutely is not hip hop.
Garrett, are you there too?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Perfectly.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, I guess let's get into it. right away. We're all here. Garrett, both Erik and I really enjoyed your album. I think the common agreement that we had, and correct me if you feel differently, Erik, but is that it's almost this music was kind of unlike anything we had ever completely heard.
Yeah, I'd say so, for sure.
Very a unique perspective or take on pop music, I think, is kind of what that's sort of how I would describe it. I think the other thing that kind of took us off guard is neither one of us know you and you live in Iowa City. That's kind of odd because we both kind of seem to know everybody for some reason. Yeah. And that's awesome because this is something that we kind of discovered. Most of the local reviews that we do, we kind of go into it already knowing the people involved. And this was just a complete mystery. And I don't remember how exactly I came across it. I think it was just searching through Bandcamp, Iowa City. I've really been enjoying going down the rabbit hole of sound science, Garrett.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your review, by the way. I honestly didn't know what to expect from it. Feel like it's easy for people to maybe not have the nicest things to say about it. But that's like a huge compliment hearing that you thought it was that unique, because that's definitely a quality that I enjoy in other music, and it's a quality that I try to incorporate into my music at the very least as best as I can.
Oh yeah, it's there. Don't worry.
Absolutely. 100%. So my first question that I have for you, Garrett, so you started out playing in bands. So I'm assuming you're from the Cedar Falls area?
Yep, I grew up in Cedar Falls and lived in Waterloo for a little bit, and then moved to the Iowa City area maybe like 4 years ago.
Okay. Can you kind of talk a little bit about your musical upbringing and what kind of led you to do such a unique project such as sound science?
Sure. Yeah, I suppose my first instrument that I ever played was just trombone back in elementary school, and at kind of like a young age, like it was, I think, the summer after 5th grade, I got really into like punk rock music, and that is where my sort of intense interest in music first started, and that's where it started to develop. And that made me want to get a bass and a guitar. And I never took lessons though. So I was always self-taught. I think that actually, now that I'm talking it out a little bit, that might be part of where I ended up where I am now, is just the idea of exploring an instrument or a piece of equipment without being taught how to play it in a formal sense. I think that is key in terms of coming up with something unique, just kind of discovering, I don't know, just messing around and seeing what comes out of it. Experimenting a little bit.
Cool. So of course I have to ask about gear. That's kind of my job on the show. There are a lot of synthesizers, drum machines, vocoding slash pitch shifting. Is a lot of that stuff just in the computer, the program, like soft synths, or do you use a lot of outboard kind of gear? I feel like I asked this question of everyone, but it truly, to me, is super interesting element of making music. So yeah, especially concerning synthesizers, do you usually just use what's in the computer, or do you have some other gear that you use?
So when I first started trying to make music on my own, it was with, and this would have been maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, I got an Electron mono machine, synthesizer slash sequencer. And I guess that's where I first started in terms of, I don't know, getting my feet wet with electronics. And I guess one EP I released was recorded with that piece of equipment. But aside from that, everything else has just been done in Ableton Live.
Yeah, it all sounds amazing. Like I checked out the singles that you've released since the album were reviewed, and they're all super great. And I think that they seemed maybe musically just a little darker, but I mean, the record that we reviewed went everywhere, so that's actually kind of hard to say. But yeah, I love what you do with the vocals, and I really like your voice. I know when we reviewed your record, that was one thing that I just kept talking about, which is, I'm sure, somewhat uncomfortable to hear, because it's just like, that's your voice. You know, it's like if someone's just like, oh, I like your face, it's like, well, thanks. You know? So, but yeah, that is something I kept coming back to, especially how the vocals were manipulated is just really, really cool, because a lot of times when people do that, they end up going into more experimental elements of the vocals, and yours stay really true to being a delivery system for words, I think, which is what lyrics probably should be, I guess. I just love the sound of your voice and the way you manipulate your voice too. So it's cool to hear that all that's just done in the box, basically, like in your recording program.
Yeah, I guess first of all, thank you. I one comment on my voice is that, so making music is kind of a really private thing for me. Like I've never performed live. Like I'm not used to singing in front of people. So I don't know, when I sit down and work on a song, it's just me blown in my place. And I don't know. So like the idea of people hearing my voice was really scary at first. I don't know what led me to be brave enough to ever release anything, but I was just going to address the effects thing. Yeah. So I think part of not being, again, like a traditional singer, or like I never took voice lessons or anything. Another thing that comes with that is just an interest in vocal effects. So like with the pitch shifting, and I mean, even just like pitch correction, like auto tune, that was a way for me to just be comfortable with my own voice at the beginning. And I thought stylistically, though, that there's more application that can be made out of it, other than just, you know, like with auto tune, it's just really associated with mainstream pop music and not really much else outside of that. So like it just kind of crossed my mind, like, what if I try like an ambient song with auto-tune vocals over it, or like fake classical stuff with auto-tune? I don't know. Yeah, I guess if it wasn't obvious, I'm just a big vocal effects guy in general.
Well, that's one of the things that I really appreciated about the sound of sound science, is that the vocal effects element, I kind of describe your music as almost like mutated pop or something, like, you know, just this really like sort of, at times it's like, it almost sounds bizarre and eerie. And as Erik mentioned, some of the new stuff kind of has a darker tone to it, but it's also just extremely satisfying. And so it just seems like you've cultivated this musical world using those special effects and everything. Do you have any particular influences that sort of influenced your going in that direction, considering that you started out playing in bands and then you kind of became this solo artist doing this sort of interesting take on pop music?
Yeah, so the number one influence for me, far and away, is the band Animal Collective.
Oh yeah.
And I've been a big fan of theirs for like a decade and a half almost now, and I still post on their fan forums every once in a while. And actually just saw them live last week. The thing that has always, well, there's a lot of things that draw me to their music, but one thing that I really appreciate about them is how they make experimental music, but it always has a sense of melody. That's it, at least for artists I'm familiar with. I feel like it's a kind of uncommon trait. Like it's usually like something that's more, I don't want to say radio friendly, but something that's a little more traditional if it has melody with it, or it's like far to the other side where if it's experimental, it's going to be like, either not have vocals at all, or I don't know, very unconventional vocals or something that that aren't necessarily melodic. And I think that that's one quality in their music that has, I don't know, just always been big to me, is the kind of mashing of the experimental with the sort of pop side.
Yeah, sure. And I can definitely hear that now that you mentioned Animal Collective, I can definitely hear that in your music, especially with the blending. I mean, that's kind of how I would describe sound science, Garrett, is the blending of experimental with melody. What I found interesting also is you talk about how you did some collaborations with what's his name, Dan Conroda from OK Go. Am I saying that right?
Dan Konopka.
Konopka. Okay, I wrote it down in my handwriting, which is always bad. You want to talk a little bit about how you ended up with collaborating with a member of OK Go?
How I got in touch with Dan, this would have been, I don't know, not quite a year ago. I was just looking for a drummer to work with on one of my songs because I never collaborated with any other musician on my music, and rhythm can sometimes be a difficult component for me. And I had this song, which the most recently released song of mine, I guess, called Influence, where I had sent, or I had posted something online just requesting a drummer, I guess. I don't know the word for it, but he listened to the demo. And so he primarily, at least at the moment, works as kind of like an engineer, as I understand it. And also kind of like a session musician with his drumming. And he listened to the song and he basically sent me a message saying that he thought we were coming from a similar place musically, and that he'd be down to add drums to the song. And that was a really cool experience. I mean, it was done remotely. Like he works out of California, but just, I don't know, like we had like an hour-long phone conversation about the song. And
wow.
Yeah, like it was like him also just kind of trying to figure out like the drumming style that I would like in my music and that would work with my music. And I didn't really know what to expect from it going in, especially because, if I'm being honest, I'm not that familiar with OK Go's music. But yeah, working with Dan was, I don't know, a really, I guess, fun, and he's just easy to work with. I don't know, he's a really down-to-earth guy. And then I released a kind of short Christmas EP last year, and I had another song that I didn't really like my own percussion on. And then I just contacted Dan and asked if he would be down to record drums for another song. That's the other time we've worked together, and hopefully more in the future. We'll see.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's
Speaking
awesome.
of the song Influence, did Influence have a specific thing that it was referencing? Essentially, if I don't know, the song seems like it's saying, if you have influence, you have to be careful so you don't tell people to do the wrong thing because you have that power. Was that in regards to anything in particular, or is that just sort of a broad idea of, the potential dangers of influence over people?
I think when I originally wrote the lyrics, it was kind of in response to something politically a while back, that it just occurred to me that this one person could, just by sharing their opinion on something or policy, or I don't even really remember what it was, but the idea that they can just affect like millions of people into thinking the same way just because this one person said it. And it was like a scary thought to me at the time. And I feel like my songs in general, probably like my lyrics tend to be more, as I would describe them, just like abstract musings.
Right.
And I think Influence is unique in that there was more like a message that I wanted the listener to pick up on.
Yeah.
And so much so that I did 2 different versions of it. Like the second one has, the more recently released one has lyric changes, because I actually got feedback from people saying they had no idea what the song was about the first time around. And I'm like, oh, this is a song where I actually really want people to understand. So then that was part of my motivation behind re-recording it and rewriting a few words. And I guess also just because I want it to be on the next record as well. So just to kind of get a refresh on it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think you accomplished it because, yeah, that is the one song that I've heard of yours where I was like, I think this is about something, like specific. Along those same lines, along with Influence, you had, I think, 3 more singles you've done this year. And you said that those are going to be part of a bigger album. But you also mentioned that this is the first time you've done this, where you've released singles before a record. What was your reasoning for that? Because I notice a lot of artists are now doing singles a lot more than they used to. And I'm trying to understand it, from a creator's point of view, but also from your point of view, what was the reasoning for doing singles first, album later?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the previous 2 albums that I did, so the first one, Surreal, is something that I had kind of, like, before I even considered getting it mixed or anything, like I had really thought about kind of how the whole thing should sound and how the whole thing should flow. Like I'm a really big album guy as opposed to singles. Like I like albums that have a nice sequence to them and sound cohesive. And I guess similarly with the second album, Palace of Calm, like I had the sequence in mind before getting it mixed and mastered and everything. And I felt like there was a good flow there. So my motivation for album 3, that's not quite finished yet, was to start with, I kind of had like when I was trying to think of what I wanted to do for a third album, like I didn't really have a theme in mind. Like Surreal is kind of about surrealism. Palace of Calm kind of had a more minimal, more pitch shifting kind of thing going on. For the third one, I had this pool of like 30 unfinished songs, and I didn't know what I wanted it to be. So I just decided, okay, I'm just gonna finish one song at a time. And I mean, there's no way I'm gonna get to all 30, but just whatever songs I felt were of this moment for me were the ones that I would tackle and finish. And so far, I mean, I'm on a 7th song right now, and I guess I kind of have like a deadline set for myself, because otherwise I could just keep going. But but anyways, like to go back to the original question, I think that I have kind of picked up on a trend where people seem more concerned about singles and individual songs. Like that's kind of been a trend over the past, I don't know how many years, where releasing a single and that being maybe more what people focus on and less, like I have a lot of like my younger friends that are into music, like I ask them what their favorite albums are,
right,
and they don't have an answer for that. Like I feel like that was kind of in the back of my head. And then also just the idea of being able to put music out at a faster rate was enticing to me. My original thought was that I was going to do like one song a month, like release one song a month. And now I'm kind of feeling like now I kind of have a better idea of what the album is as a whole. And I feel that I should, I don't know, now that I have that goal in mind, I guess my focus is more so on just finishing the whole complete picture. So I don't, at least at this moment, I don't have plans to release another single until it's completed, but I'm also pretty spontaneous in the decisions that I make, so that could always change.
Do you think releasing those singles helped you gain more of a better understanding of where you're going to go with a full album project?
Oh yeah, for certain. That was also, I would say that was another motivator from the beginning. I'm glad you asked that. I work with a mixing engineer, Max Carolla, who I feel like I should give some credit to, because I'm not an engineer myself, and I love doing mixing, but it's not something I'm like trained to do. And I like the idea of having, since it's just me otherwise, just having like another pair of ears on it. That's sort of what Max is for me. And I had thrown this idea out to him of just doing one song at a time rather than the whole batch of songs once I have them done. And he said that was even like preferred for him. And that just kind of started the whole thing. And I would say that every subsequent song that I finished has informed the next one I work on in at least some way. Like I've started to notice more themes in terms of like sound palette, I guess, in some songs, and even just like mixing decisions that were made in one song. It would make me think ahead to the next one I was working on, like how that might influence my approach on that current song, what I thought really worked about the previous mix, and just keeping that in mind.
Very cool. So like with a full album project, do you usually have like a concept in mind for the album as a whole? Or would you say that each song kind of has more of a theme individually? Or is it kind of leaning more towards like a concept that ties all the songs together thematically?
The way I see it is, especially for this next one, that it's not one concept that ties everything together, but rather the way I've kind of been thinking about it is that every song that's currently on my list at least connects to another song in a way, and that song relates to another song in a way. And so it's just like they all, while it might not be one theme, there's like enough of an overlap in themes to, and in a way that makes them, I don't know, kind of makes sense to me. I still don't know like the track order or the flow yet, so that's going to be, and that's something that I guess I'm intentionally not even thinking about this time around, like until all the mixing is done and we're on to the mastering process. I think part of this album for me is just changing the approach in general. And to be honest, like I don't even know if all of the songs I record for it will be on it, but it's kind of just like almost just a practice and going with the flow and seeing what comes of it. I don't know.
Sure.
I see that you also said that you have been collaborating with a British rapper that goes by R Soul.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you guys hooked up and what you're working on and the plans going forward and everything?
I was wondering about that myself.
Yeah, I guess given that he's British, I just have to comment on the way you pronounce it. Like,
okay.
if you say it a little quicker, like Arsehole.
Yeah.
That took me a long time to pick up on, actually, but
it took me a couple seconds there, but all right, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
He how we connected was through SoundCloud. I don't know. He just kind of reached out and said that he liked that I had a sort of different approach to melody, and he had this idea was just that I would sing like a chorus on a song, I think, and he would do the verses, and I started sending him some ideas that I had for songs, and he really took to this sort of sci-fi concept that I had for a song about somebody who's like really excited to go to space, to outer space, but then it just ultimately turns into a giant disappointment for them due to some like mundane things. And he really liked that idea, and we turned it into a song, and I don't know when it's going to be released yet. We're going to release it under the name Solar Science, which is just like our soul backwards, soul R. We haven't totally talked about more songs yet. Part of me wonders, like, given that we have like a whole different name for it, you never know. I don't know. It's a really, maybe this isn't very surprising given my music in general, but like it's a really hard song to classify. Like it didn't follow that verse chorus structure. And instead it's like, I don't know, like sci-fi club music with like British rapping, and then me doing whatever I do over it. I don't know what people will make of it, but he's a really cool guy, and he's very eccentric, I would say, and his own music is also really good. Like I would recommend checking him out if you haven't heard him. Unfortunately, he doesn't distribute outside of SoundCloud, but
So did you do the music for that track, or was he working on that, or was it collaborative?
He actually did all the music, so that was another new thing for me. Just singing over somebody else's music like was actually kind of difficult, I would say, just because I'm so used to my own process. That said, I shouldn't say too much, but there are some instrumental things that I sent him that whether it's a Solar Science song or an Our Soul song, from my understanding, he intends to use some instrumental stuff that I made as well.
Cool.
And share
that
with him.
That's rad, man. I'm super stoked to hear that, Garrett. I love the description, science fiction club music or sci-fi club music. That piques my interest right there.
So Garrett, I was wondering, it says, or you said that you kind of started making music just on your own around 2019. So that would put you in the Iowa City area, right? But was that also during like kind of like quarantine, or did this start before all of that, or was this sort of a result of having a lot of time?
I think when I started it definitely would have been about a year or so before the pandemic hit. I would say that first year or so was just me figuring out my own like what I'm really doing, just playing around in Ableton and seeing what comes of it. But I guess I didn't release anything until after the start of the pandemic. I wouldn't say it was due to free time necessarily. I guess at that point I had turned 30, and it sounds cheesy to say, but like, you know, like a childhood fantasy of mine or whatever was just to like release an album of my own music. And I had the songs for it, and I just felt like that was the right time. It's not really just the product of free time that causes me to work on music, but rather just the idea of having a creative outlet where it's like this place where I can just be myself and sit down, and like it's almost like journaling for me in a way where I sit down and I don't know what's going to come out, but whatever's been on my mind for the past day or whatever, like that's typically what does come out. So it's just like almost just like a healthy thing for me. Like I do it more just for myself, I would say.
Has it affected any interest at all of playing in bands anymore, or are you pretty much at this point focused on being a solo artist?
I mean, I would love to be part of a band, I would say. Like if anybody listening to this like plays drums or organ or something, like I would totally like message me on Instagram or SoundCloud or something, because I don't know, I would love to collaborate more with people. And I guess this would have been a couple months ago, I saw that Beatles Get Back documentary, and I found that really inspiring, and seeing how they bounce ideas off of one another in the moment and working together on music. And I think that almost more than anything really got me daydreaming or whatever about wanting to do a band and be able to collaborate more like in person, and I don't know, be able to bounce ideas off of one another. I feel like that would be really neat. Cool. First, I mean, I got to finish this next album, but
right.
I would totally be open to a band in the future though.
Do you, going back to that also, do you have any plans of doing sound science as a live thing ever?
I've tried coming up with stuff that would work live a few times. So it's definitely a thing I've thought about. But it's like a question in my mind of how to make it work live. Like some people kind of have hangups about electronic music where like if say I don't know, had like stuff pre-sequenced or whatever, it would seem like I'm not really playing much. So then there's kind of the conundrum in my mind of how to, because some stuff kind of needs to be sequenced, but then like what would my more performative component be besides the singing, or is singing enough? I don't know. I guess I haven't come up with a solution for that yet, but I kind of feel like if I were to ever do something live, I would probably prefer not to have like a laptop with me. So while a lot of my stuff is done in Ableton, I would probably like rework. And I mean, this is stuff I've tried before. It's just like reworking songs with my mono machine or analog 4 synthesizer. And I feel like that would be the route I would take. But I still, like I'm totally open to doing, I would love to start playing shows, but it's maybe still a ways away yet.
Makes sense.
In terms of figuring it out.
Well, I can say personally, I would definitely come see you perform with a laptop. And if you did your vocals and manipulations live, that would be well enough of a performance, in my opinion. So.
I have to agree with that statement, Eric.
I mean, maybe again, like with my spontaneous decision making, like you never know. Like that thought just might come to me someday. That whatever, I'm just gonna press play and sing.
Sure. And that would be awesome. Definitely let Eric and I know if we can come and see a sound science performance.
We'd love that.
Oh, I could definitely let you know if that ever happens.
That would be awesome. Well, it was fantastic talking to you, Garrett. Exactly.
Yeah, but thank you so much for being with us, Garrett. And I can't wait to hear more of the singles, and I can't wait to hear the full length when it's out, and the other Solar Science sounds amazing too. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm pretty stoked for whatever you're going to put out. So
yeah, thanks for having me on. Like honestly, this is the first interview I've ever done before, so I don't know. Like
nice.
I didn't know what to expect, but
yeah. We never know what to expect when we do interviews either, or anything.
Well, I don't know. I had fun, so
yeah. Well, thanks again.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. You have anything else you'd like to say before we let you go, Garrett? Anywhere that people can find your stuff? I mean, we already talked about Spotify, or anything else you'd like to promote?
I guess Sound Science, it's on pretty much any streaming service that I know of. SoundCloud. If you're curious about Instagram, it's like SSound SCI.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to check that out.
Like Garrett said, if you play organ or drums or I don't know, whatever else, it sounds like he'd be willing to, or at least interested in working on something. So reach out to him. That'd be really sweet.
I know organ's kind of a out there instrument, but like I'm really into organ. I feel like that would be sweet.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much, Garrett.
Yeah, thanks again.
So
nice.
Speaking of local music, what do we got for shows coming up, Erik?
Well, we do have some shows, but we're kind of coming up on the old Mission Creek Festival in Iowa City, and that sort of eclipses a lot of things. That's just kind of the way it is. So how I'm going to do this, I'm just going to tell you about the shows, and you can look it up on the Mission Creek website because I can't really go into everything and where it's at and things like that. But I will tell you who's playing, and then you can check it out if those sound cool to you. So here we are. We're going to start on the 5th of April. There's really nothing else between the last set of shows I told you about and starting there. So that's where we'll start. So on Tuesday, April 5th at XBK Live, we have The Convictions with Earth Groans, Agony of Defeat, and To Be Determined. Now, I know that Sioux City Pete, his band used to be called Sioux City Pete and The Convictions. So I'm not sure if that's the same band or not. So if you like Sioux City Pete, I guess do some research and see if it's connected in any way. And if not, maybe you already like Convictions and that has nothing to do with Sioux City Pete. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. Okay. On that same day, so the Village Theater, which is a very nice place. I think it's in Davenport. Is that right?
Yes, it's in Davenport. Yep.
So this is called the We Are All Sick Now Tour. It has Lydia Can't Breathe, City of the Week, and locals Switchblade Saturdays, Non Grata, and Deselect. So that's on the 5th as well. And then I'm going to bury the lead on this one just for fun. The openers are Intent, Three Finger Betty, and To Be Announced. And this is at Lefties Live Music. It's DRI. DRI is playing at Lefties. So that's cool. DRI 40th anniversary tour. So that's
what does DRI stand for?
Dirty Rotten Imbeciles.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Good old stuff. All right. So now here's the part where I tell you about Mission Creek. On Thursday the 7th, we're going to have Elizabeth Moen, Tennyson, Fennez, that's hard to say, Fennesz, Fennesz, Tempers, Corridor, K. Maru, Alex Rush, and Lake Villain. Now, these aren't necessarily local, but some of them are, and this festival is local, and it's kind of a big deal. A lot of times when they announce the bands, literally everyone goes, I've never heard of those bands. And then, like 2 years later, everyone loves the bands.
That band, yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
I wonder if Garrett has ever thought that, you know, he can just use the theme song to Weird Science, Sound Science.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
We should have asked him.
I'll tell you though, man, that solar science, man, that's something I am really looking forward to hearing.
Me too. Yeah, I'm excited to hear that. I love British rappers.
Me too.
And
oh, dude, I'm going to send you an album also, in addition to the Cheesy Fingertips video.
Okay.
I discovered from this, I don't know if he's a producer, but his name is Robert. That's just his name.
Okay.
And the name of the album is Orange is the New Black. So yeah, I don't know if it's supposed to be based on the show or what, but Cool Keith, Slug from Atmosphere, and Jason Williamson, I think it is, from the Sleaford Mods, are all special guests on it.
Oh, wow. Cool.
But the entire record has a rapper, all of the songs, and it's only like 9 songs, has this rapper, this British rapper by the name of Sonny Jim on it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's almost like blues rap.
Wow.
Like, it's so good. I'm going to send it to you right after this. Sonny Jim.
That's
but the name,
Dougie Jones's son's name on Twin Peaks: The Return.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap. I'm going to send this record to you. I think you're totally going to dig it.
Cool.
And any of the listeners, if Eric decides not to edit this out, please go check out that record if you're into hip hop at all.
All right. Yeah, so I'll check it out too. Nice.
Cool. Also hit us up on Instagram and Facebook. Listen to us on Spotify. And we have all the links. You'll see all the links when we post it. And this was a great episode. I'm super stoked for this sound science thing.
Me too. I'm really excited to hear future music.
I really
literally and figuratively.
Exactly. I really do hope that he finds a way to play live, because
me too.
Yeah, that's enough to bring me out of the woodwork.
Nice. Do you hear that? I mean, the only thing Dan is going to go to is any show.
But the thing is, I've already said that about 6 different shows, and it never happened. So,
well, now it's a promise.
It's I never said that, Eric. You're the one who's putting that on me.
I have a contract written up here.
Yes,
I'll fax it over to you so you can get that taken care of.
Absolutely. All right. Take care, everyone. We will talk to you next week. Please do not sign that petition to have me actually start going to shows. Not that I don't want to go to shows. I want to go to shows. Oh my God, I want to go to shows. I just haven't been able to.
Well, good thing they just keep happening.
They just keep happening to throw right into my face.
Yeah. Someday you'll go to one.
It's gonna happen. Trust me. And I honestly, from the bottom of my heart, everybody who has started playing again, I wish them the best of luck.
Yeah.
So I'm super happy you're all out there doing creative things.
Heck yeah.
I really, really am. And if you want to smack me like Will Smith style when you see me, you have my blessings.
There you go, guys. If you put together a show that is so undeniably good that Dan has to go, you get to smack him in the face.
Well, just one person and one time. Don't.
Okay. Yeah.
Eric's like, okay, but I'm not telling them that.
No, that I have all these. I have a lawyer here. He is drawing up all these contracts.
I'd like to talk to that lawyer.
His name is John, my lawyer.
John, my lawyer. Is that the name? John, my lawyer.
John Barron is the name of my lawyer. So.
John Barron.
If you want to talk to him, I'll send me a message and I'll send you his fax. That's the best way to get a hold of him.
Yeah, his facts, the ones that have been fact checked.
Yeah.
All of the facts about John Barron will be sent to you by Eric.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay.
All right, guys. You all have a good week.
Bye.
Bye. Oh.
Cool. next year someone's gonna fucking die. Whew. Ah.
Well,